Linda from the HOA didn't knock. She stapled a bright pink notice straight onto my gate. Aggressive landscaping. $500 fine. I stood there holding my coffee, watching her walk off like she'd just saved the neighborhood from a crime scene. My offense. 3 overgrown shrubs and a line of mulch that dared to cross her invisible border. So I did what any numbers guy with a lawyer dad would do. I opened a new file, labeled it Exhibit A, and hit record. That's when I realized if they wanted a rule war, I was about to fight it by the book. And it all started with that pink slip on my gate. It was still blue-gray outside when I spotted it, a sheet of paper taped to my gate, fluttering against the morning chill. Aggressive landscaping. $500. Fine. The print bled through the thin copy paper, HOA seal half smudged. I'm 52 and auditor. Reading paperwork is muscle memory. I didn't feel anger yet, just the prickle of being evaluated. I stepped closer, took a photo, then another with the gate's address plate in frame. The paper trembled slightly as I peeled it off. Received EO2-01. The timestamp said, my first exhibit. Frank from next door was already out balancing his mug. They hit you too, just me apparently. 6:12 this morning. He pointed to his porch camera. I got it on motion. Want the clip uncropped, I said. And the timestamp. He grinned. You sound like you're prepping court already. Habit. By 6:45 a.m., I had the notice sealed in a plastic sleeve marked Exhibit A Received. My hands shook a little, not from fear, but from the familiar audit rush the moment you realize you're building a case. I called Dad. He answered on the second ring, voice gravelly from sleep. They fined me, I said. For what this time? Aggressive landscaping. They said the shrubs look hostile. A beat of silence, then a low chuckle. Well, son, some people weaponize rules. I'm not laughing. I know. Listen, don't tear it down. Photograph copy, label, then file. If Porter 7.4 really changed, they'd need a filed amendment. I wrote it down. If Porter 7.4 changed, where's the filed copy? The morning sun climbed, lighting the dew along the driveway. Each bead looked like a decimal point in an endless audit line. The absurdity of the fine started curdling into something else, an insult printed on letterhead. Inside, I opened the HOA portal. The bylaw update, Fairter 7.4 tab, redirected to page not found. Perfect. I saved a PDF of that, too. Frank sent over the clip. A figure in a reflective vest, no visible badge, taped the notice and walked off. 06-12-08. The HOA office opens at 9. Whoever filed it wanted me to see it first thing before I'd had coffee. I poured one anyway and stared at the screen. Show me the uncropped photo, I muttered, or show me the vote. The words came out steadier than I felt. My phone buzzed. Dad again. Save everything he said. Don't reply, don't post online. Paper wins. Understood. You remember when they called your mailbox non-compliant 3 years ago, and how did that end with them refunding my assessment fee after you cited their own bylaws? He exhaled a satisfied hum. Exactly. You're armed with paperwork. The line crackled. I could picture him leaning on his old mahogany desk files, neatly stacked like ammunition he'd never fire. By noon, I'd compiled the folder Notice, Video, Portal, PDF, Old Bylaws Copy, labeled, time-stamped, duplicated to cloud. The quiet in the house felt different now, pressurized. Every rustle of paper was a countdown. Frank texted HOA truck back at cul-de-sac. I peeked through the blinds. Same vest. They were posting another sheet, different house this time. The pattern was spreading. I clicked record on my phone, catching the tail end of the motion. Not rage now, documentation. When I finally sat at the kitchen table, coffee gone cold, the fine notice lay under the sleeve like evidence under glass. I traced the embossed seal with a thumb. Whoever wrote aggressive meant it as control, not description. I opened a new document and typed the header, HOA, fine, aggressive landscaping. Then beneath it, Exhibit A received 0201, 06:12 a.m. Fairer 7.4 review pending filed copy verification. I wasn't sure yet how far this would go, only that the quiet way of letting things slide had reached its limit. Outside the gate, clicked shut in the wind, the mark of tape still visible like a bruise. 3 versions of 8 or 7.4 sat open on my screen. All claimed to be official. Only one carried the blue stamp, filed. I leaned closer, tracing the date beneath the seal, 02-001, County Recorder's Office. The other 2, one draft, one proposed amendment. Neither had signatures. That was the kind of inconsistency that made auditors twitch. I called the number listed at the bottom of the county page. A woman's voice answered, steady cautious, like she'd fielded too many HOA calls before lunch. Recorder's Office. This is Shelley. Hi. I'm trying to confirm which version of HOA bylaw, Arro 7.4, is actually filed. There seem to be several. A short pause. Property address I gave it. Paper shuffling on her end. We have a filing for a revision last year received February 1st time-stamped and certified. Anything newer would have to be filed again. That's the one I have. Header says received 0201. Could you confirm it's the latest? I can't give legal advice, sir, but if it says filed, that's the one on record. That was all I needed. I copied the file name exactly as it appeared, HOA, Bylaw, 7.4, filed, 0201.pdf, and attached it to a fresh folder labeled Exhibit B. Outside my window, the sound of a mower started up ironic background music for a fine about aggressive landscaping. I emailed Linda, the HOA chairwoman. She preferred titles like President. Subject line, verification request. PRD 7.4, filed copy. Body, please cite verbatim the filed language currently in force as recorded with the county. Kindly include the filing stamp. I hit send. 10 minutes later, her reply blinked in. The HOA reserves the right to enforce community standards as updated internally by board consensus. Filed copies are for record-keeping only. I reread it twice, then a third time. Board consensus. Not even close to compliance. My father would have called that creative governance. I dialed him. She says the filed copy is for record-keeping only. Dad's chuckle rolled through the line. Son policy can't outrun the filing stamp. That's exactly what I'm writing in my notes. Good. Don't argue, just gather. I already have the filed version. Perfect. That's your first brick. I printed the stamped PDF, slipped it behind the fine notice in the binder. Exhibit B, filed, RT 7.4, certified. The ink from the blue seal left a faint mark on my thumb. Evidence ink, heavy and real. Around 2:00 p.m., I walked to the post office. The same faces were there, retirees checking mailboxes, a contractor signing for parcels. Ordinary people orbiting ordinary rules. I asked the clerk for a certified envelope. She stamped the receipt with a practiced thud. Official business. Sort of, I said. Community archaeology. She smiled without asking further. Back home, my inbox pinged again another message from Linda. We operate under a living document principle. Board-approved drafts supersede filings if necessary for timely governance. That was my confirmation. She'd written her own confession in bureaucratic prose. I opened a new page in my log. Observation HOA enforcing unfiled draft. Risk violation of County Statute Auburn 12-07. Action retain filed version. Note response tone. The more I typed, the steadier my pulse became. I wasn't angry now, I was auditing. Proof didn't shout. It waited quietly in the margins. At 5:15, the sun dipped low, turning the HOA gate gold. The tape mark from the notice was still visible, a small scar of adhesive. Frank saw me out front and waved. Any progress? Found 3 versions of the same law. Guess which one they used? The fake one, the unfiled one. He whistled. Proofs in the footnote, huh? Exactly. Inside, I laid the stamped page on the table beside the original notice. 2 artifacts side by side, accusation and proof. The camera on my laptop blinked red as I recorded a short log entry. Day 2. Evidence shows HOA enforcing unfiled policy. 87.4 filed copy dated 02/01, verified by county, preparing formal inquiry. My voice sounded calm, too. Calm. That was the thing about anger channeled through paper, it came out organized. As night pressed against the windows, I slipped the binder into a locked drawer and labeled it in black marker. Case Aggressive Landscaping. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. Somewhere in that hum, a single line from Dad replayed policy can't outrun the filing stamp. It wasn't outrage anymore, it was momentum. Dad slid a legal pad across the desk like a dealer cutting the table. Yellow paper, tight lines. His fountain pen clicked once. "We'll comply loudly," he said. "Not a centimeter out of bounds." I set my binder down. Exhibit A, the fine peeked through the sleeve. Exhibit B, the filed USHRI 7.4 sat on top like a brick. The office smelled faintly of lemon oil and old paper. On the credenza, his brass notary seal glinted. "Start at the curb," he said. Setbacks: 5 feet from the sidewalk, 2 from the drive, 3-foot sight triangle at the corner. He nodded. "Good. Now translate that into a drawing a judge could understand without coffee." I pulled a clean sheet and drew the lot outline front walk mailbox, the gate that had worn the morning insult. Species list. Dad opened the code printout. Drought-tolerant species permitted. Footnote B. Allows spiny succulents if they don't encroach. There's your lane. I sketched barrels and prickly pears in staggered runs, leaving a clean maintenance aisle. We'll run drip lines under gravel concealed. No visible hoses, everything tidy. Label the heights, he said. Any vertical element above 30 inches needs 10 feet from the drive. Flag those. I penciled in low clusters up front, taller columns tucked back. By the book. He leaned back, the chair creaking. Make the plan so compliant it embarrasses the accusation. I smirked despite myself. Compliance is the sharpest thorn. Dad smiled. There it is. Put that on your cover page. I typed the title, block in all caps, Front Garden Plan, a 7.4 compliant layout. Beneath it, a simple creed. Compliance is the sharpest thorn. Witness, he asked. Elena, I said. Desert Flora Nursery. She'll vouch species and spacing. Good, he said. 2 signatures, 1 notary, 1 camera. The office clock ticked. In the corner, his old cassette recorder sat on a shelf. He pressed the red button. The click felt ceremonial. Read your intent, he said. I cleared my throat. Homeowner proposes a drought-tolerant, non-encroaching front planting per filed at 37.4. All elements measured from the property line. Setbacks observed. Again, he said softer. Slow. Make it boring. Boring is armor. I read it again. Somewhere between sentence 2 and 3, my pulse found a steady metronome. We worked the grid like mechanics with a torque chart. He called numbers. I tightened them on paper. We marked the utility easement in a faint dashed line. We circled the mailbox clearance. We drew the sight triangle at the drive mouth, then shaded it like a no-go zone. At noon, we hit the diner counter seats coffee that could strip paint. He unfolded the plan on the laminate. Frank texted HOA truck drove by. Twice. Dad buttered toast without looking up. Let them drive, he said. Let them film. We're building the record. Elena met us back at the office at 2. Sun hat soil under fingernails, a tape measure clipped to her belt. She studied the plan without flattery. Barrels here, she said, tapping the page. Opuntia pads against the brick. No creep if you keep them tight. Golden torch in that back pocket. Nothing higher than 24 inches inside this front band. Can you certify species and mature spread, I asked. She pulled a pre-printed sheet from her bag. Template for HOAs. Learned the hard way. She signed and wrote Professional Opinion Species and Spacing under her name. Dad slid the notary journal across. Stamp, thunk, paper, thud. The room swallowed the sounds like a courtroom swallows whispers. Now the choreography, he said. Markers at corners. Chalk lines. Chalk reads well on video. Lighting, I asked. Sunset, he said. Soft, even. You want the tape numbers to pop? Frank can grab angle 2 from his porch. Elena lifted a brow. We filming a garden or a heist? Both, Dad said. Except our loot is compliance. We stepped outside to check sightlines. I measured from the sidewalk in calling numbers, 5 feet exact, 6 at the bend. Dad replied like a surveyor. Mark it. I set orange flags quietly into the turf. Silent beat. The neighborhood breeze carried grill smoke from down the block. Someone was testing a lawnmower. The throttle rose and fell. Back inside, Dad picked up the phone and dialed the HOA office. He set it to speaker. This is Caro, a receptionist began. Good afternoon, Dad said, warm as a closed file. This is counsel for 112 Oakwood. We'll be installing a drought-tolerant front garden this evening per filed 7.4. As a courtesy, we'll email the stamped plan. Please acknowledge receipt by return email. We, require pre-approval, the voice said. Filed law says otherwise, Dad answered. But you're welcome to attend and observe. We'll read 47.4 into our footage. He ended the call gently, then looked at me. When they object, and they will, you'll say 7 words. What 7? Please read it into the minutes, Chair. I wrote them in the margin. We scanned the plan and sent it as Exhibit C with a simple subject, Notice of Compliant Install 87.4 filed. The outbox timer spun, then blinked sent. I sorted tools on my bench. Headlamps, chalk a fresh tape measure, a line level, a small tripod. My hands moved on their own, the pleasant, sure rhythm of a job you can do in the dark. Elena stepped back in with flats of cacti balanced on a cart. Nursery invoice attached, she said. Species codes printed on tags. Perfect, I said. We'll lay everything before we dig. Nothing planted until measurements lock. Dad checked his watch. Sun's dropping. He held up the pen. One more thing. He signed the bottom corner of the plan, prepared under review of OR 7.4 filed. His name in that neat lawyer's hand anchored the page. Why loud? I asked, rolling the sheet into a tube. He smiled. Because they prefer whispers. We'll give them clarity. Out by the truck, the sky had begun its copper turn. I loaded gravel bags, the pavers for edging 2 rolls of fabric. Elena lined the plants by height like soldiers awaiting orders. Frank crossed the street with his camera bag. Angle 2 is hot, he said. I'll pull a timecode overlay so the tape reads. I tightened the tripod plate on my own camera, locked the bubble level. The gate clicked. Wind rattled the old tape scar, a pale rectangle on metal. Ready, Dad asked. I looked at the flags glowing in the slant light, the chalk box waiting like a starting gun, the plan rolled under my arm. Ready, I said. Let's obey them into a corner. Dad grinned. Compliance is the sharpest thorn. Elena laughed. And I'm here for the horticulture. Frank checked his battery. And I'm here for the footage. I glanced at the binder through the front window, A, B, and now C, a spine of proof forming vertebra by vertebra. The anger that had started at the gate felt distant. In its place, a cleaner heat purpose. Dad capped the pen, clicked off the office light, and left the door half open for the evening air. The hallway hummed with the building's old ventilation, a steady breath. He looked at me, then at the cameras. Let's plant it tonight. Cameras rolling. The night was clean and sharp. Headlights cut across the yard, washing over the fresh chalk lines we'd laid before dusk. The camera's red light blinked steady, a quiet witness. Dad adjusted the tripod voice low but certain. Every inch counts. Read me the first. I crouched by the sidewalk tape hooked to the nailhead. 5 feet 0 from sidewalk to planting line. He echoed it into the microphone. 50, confirmed, per filed, 37.4. The wind moved through the gravel like a breath through teeth. I heard the rustle of paper, our printed plan fluttering under the clipboard. We advanced one flag to the next. Each call and echo felt like hammer blows on invisible armor. Next stake, he said. 5-6 from corner to run, I replied. Logged, he said. Pen scratched mechanical. Frank's voice came from the porch, faint but excited. "Both cameras are rolling." "Good," Dad called back. "We're not planting, we're recording truth." I smiled, despite the chill. The phrase had weight, like something meant to be quoted. Across the street, Gerald's porch light blinked on. He shuffled closer, jacket zipped to his chin. "You two are really doing it," he whispered. "Just keeping records," I said. He looked at the cacti lined like soldiers behind Elena's cart. "Linda's gonna lose her mind." Dad didn't look up. "She doesn't have to like it," he said evenly. "She just has to follow the filed paper." The silence that followed felt charged, like a sermon too true to argue with. I knelt, brushing dirt away until cold metal winked back an old boundary pin, rusted but firm. The camera zoomed. "Boundary pin located," I said. "Position verified per plat coordinates." Dad leaned in his pen steady above the pad. "Timestamp." I turned the camera toward the screen. Blue numerals glowed, 0317. He repeated it for the record. "Timestamp 0317, confirmation of pin location." That's when the phrase came out of me, unplanned, plant-proof, not fear. He glanced at me, a quick smile flickering before he returned to the numbers. We measured the site triangle 10 feet clear from drive to curb. No encroachment. Every cactus tagged with Latin names Elena recited like a litany. Echinocactus grusoni. Opuntia engelmanni. None exceed 24 inches. Dad's voice calm and precise. All within limits. Proceed. Frank's camera whirred softly, panning from the driveway to the flags. The footage caught the blue chalk line shimmering under the beam, the tape blade stretched taut like a stringed instrument. Mini cliff number 1. Proof taking shape under light. When we reached the last flag, Dad stood and looked down the run. "Every line, true, true," I said. "Every inch documented." He nodded once. Then we closed the loop. Back inside, the kitchen table had become a command post, laptops, binders, coffee going cold. I typed quickly. Subject completion notice. Filed 47.4 compliance. Body homeowner certifies installation per filed regulation. Setbacks observed species verified timestamp 0317 attached. Dad dictated as I wrote, voice like a metronome. Add all documentation available for inspection under Arter 12-07. "Got it," I said. Attachments A through E, find filed copy, plan photos timestamp. He leaned on the table edge. "Before you hit send, say it out loud." I looked at the camera still rolling beside the coffee mug. Completion notice submitted per filed bylaw, Series 7.4. He gave a single nod. "Send it." The ping of the email landing in the HOA inbox felt almost holy. We waited the way people do when thunder hasn't arrived yet. Gerald hovered near the open door, curiosity edging into loyalty. "So, what happens now?" Dad looked at him, one eyebrow raised. "We let procedure speak. You can't outvote a stamp." Elena laughed softly. "You two make due process sound like jazz." I refreshed the inbox. The reply came faster than I expected. Auto reply special hearing 1207 scheduled. Received 0317. The time matched our footage perfectly. Proof syncing with proof. I turned the laptop toward the lens. Auto reply confirmed. Hearing scheduled. Frank zoomed in on the timestamp. "Got it. Clean frame. That's your cliff." Dad's eyes glinted behind his glasses. "There's our next stage." Mini cliff number 2. The system had blinked, and it had noticed us. We stepped back outside. The night air carried a faint hum, the sound of sprinklers far away, the neighborhood unaware that its quiet was about to fracture in daylight. Gerald kicked the curb lightly. "You think they'll really hold a hearing?" "They just scheduled one," I said. He exhaled, half a whistle. "Then I'll be there." Elena capped her pen. "Everything measured, tagged, sealed." "All of it," I said. "Then this," she said. "Nodding at the glowing garden is the neatest protest I've ever seen." Dad folded the legal pad and tucked it into his briefcase. "Call it lawful landscaping." The cameras caught the final wide-shot cacti standing like sentinels' flags, aligned the gate's old tape scar glimmering under dew. I powered down the headlamp. For a heartbeat, darkness reclaimed everything. Only the glow of the porch camera remained a single red dot watching over what we'd built. The system had started with a notice at dawn. Now it answered back at 3:17 a.m. That symmetry felt deliberate, almost poetic. I zipped the binder closed, slid it under my arm, and looked at Dad. "See you at the hearing," I said. He smiled, brief and certain. "See you at the hearing." The council hall smelled like old carpet and disinfectant. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, relentless and bright. A single microphone waited at the center table, its red ring blinking, daring someone to speak. Dad leaned toward me, voice low. "Remember, no speeches, just facts." The chairwoman, Linda, adjusted her scarf like armor. "Next item," she said into her mic, the words flattening under the hum. "Case, aggressive landscaping. Homeowner, 112 Oakwood." I stood, binder in hand, the same one that began with a paper taped to my gate. Frank manned the side camera. Elena sat behind us, silent witness. Linda's eyes flicked to the file in front of her. "Our records show violation of landscaping aesthetics subsection 7.4 community version." Dad rose beside me. "Respectfully, Madam Chair." "Which version?" She frowned. "The active one. Could you cite its filing date?" Silence. A rustle of papers. She glanced at the other board members. "February 1st, I believe." Dad nodded toward me. "Then we're looking at the same document." He slid a flash drive across the table. "Permission to display Exhibit B." The clerk plugged it in. The projector hummed. A blue rectangle bloomed against the white wall. The filed 37.4 PDF appeared county seal bold header, and the unmistakable stamp received 0201. Gasps murmured through the small crowd. Linda's paper copy looked suddenly flimsy in her hands. Dad spoke softly, measured each word clean as a ledger line. "The bylaw your office cited was marked draft, never filed. This," he tapped the projected seal, "is the filed law of record. Mini Cliff Number 1. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to pulse faster. Linda's tone sharpened. Our counsel advised. Dad interrupted gently. "Counsel doesn't supersede record. Only filing does." One of the board members leaned in toward the screen. "The date matches county records," he said quietly. "You're enforcing a draft." Linda's pen tapped rapid, betraying nerves. "This isn't the venue." To Dad turned slightly, the practiced rhythm of a retired lawyer resurfacing. "This is the venue, Madam Chair. This hearing exists under Article 1207, which explicitly requires that enforcement derive from a filed regulation. May we enter Exhibit B into the minutes?" A pause. Then the clerk cleared her throat. "Motion to accept Exhibit B filed Art 7.4 into the record." A hand rose. Another seconded. The stamp came down with a solid thunk. "Accepted into minutes." The sound landed like a gavel strike. Mini Cliff Number 2. Frank zoomed in. The camera caught the red light of the mic and the black ink seal side by side. Dad gestured for me to cue the next file. "Roll the footage." On screen, the boundary pin, the chalk line, the cacti standing under headlights. The HUD clock glowed 0317. My own voice echoed faintly from the recording, "Plant proof, not fear." A few people in the back chuckled quietly, not mockery, just recognition of absurdity meeting precision. Linda crossed her arms. "This display isn't necessary." "Transparency usually isn't," Dad said. "But it helps." Elena leaned forward from the back row. "Every plant species certified," she added softly. "They followed your own published rulebook." Linda didn't answer. Her jaw set tight. The chair to her right adjusted his glasses. "I move we withdraw the violation and strike the fine from record." Mini Cliff Number 3. Silence before acknowledgement. Linda looked cornered, but still tried to hold posture. "This sets precedent," she said. Dad's reply came cool and clear. "That's what records are for," the board whispered. One by one, nods spread like small dominoes. The motion carried. The clerk read it aloud. Voice formal. Violation withdrawn. Fine nullified. Filed 47.4, recognized as controlling. Linda exhaled through her nose. The tension in her shoulders cracked just a little. Dad closed the binder softly. We thank the board for honoring the filed record. He started to gather the exhibits, but the clerk raised a hand. Mr. Keller, one moment. We need to stamp acceptance. She pressed the seal to the edge of Exhibit B. The heavy sound filled the room. Thud. Under the seal, the ink gleamed wet for a heartbeat before sinking into paper. I caught the phrase on the clerk's lips as she spoke the procedural line. Paper outlives noise. The viral quote landed naturally, not scripted, just true. People smiled faintly the way small towns do when something justly resolves. Dad's hand rested briefly on my shoulder. Justice isn't always loud, he murmured. Sometimes it's notarized. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. The red mic light went dark. Frank stepped forward, unplugging the drive. All captured, he said quietly. Elena squeezed my arm. Proof in the footnote, she whispered. Linda gathered her papers, avoiding eye contact. Next item, she said, voice smaller now. The clerk filed our exhibits into a manila envelope stamped, Hearing, Farshon 12-07, closed. Dad and I walked out together. The hall's double doors shut behind us with a soft, pneumatic sigh. Outside, the air smelled faintly of rain and soil. He tilted his head at the sky. We're not done yet. They'll send follow-ups. I know I said, but tonight we won. He gave a slow nod. On paper, the only battlefield that mattered. We passed under the flickering parking lot light. Somewhere, a security camera panned red diode winking, recording our exit. I imagined its footage labeled just like our own, received 2142. The fine that had started all of this was already irrelevant, but the seal, the simple pressed mark, glowed in my mind like a sunrise through glass. Outrage had burned itself down to something quieter, cleaner. Justice. Paper outlives noise, I said aloud, testing the weight of it. Dad smiled without slowing his stride. Exactly, and noise eventually reads the minutes. We walked on the courthouse door, clicking shut behind us, and the echo sounded like closure. The envelope waited on the welcome matte creamstock embossed seal, catching the morning light. Order Fever 12-07. Rescission filed. The words were raised under my thumb, the paper heavier than it looked like proof had gained weight overnight. I carried it to the table, unsealed it with the back of a key. The flap came loose with a dry whisper. Inside, 2 pages, stapled, stamped, and signed. County HOA Board, official order, pursuant to 812-07, hearing findings, aggressive landscaping case. Fine rescinded. All penalties void. Refund authorized. Entered into record this day. Received. Filed. I read it twice before breathing. The ink still smelled faintly of solvent, the kind that sticks to your fingertips after justice finally becomes tangible. Dad called before I could reach for my phone. Did it arrive? Just opened it, I said. Seals embossed. He exhaled a sound halfway between relief and pride. Good. Keep the envelope. Courts forget. Envelopes don't. I turned the order under the light. Refunds mentioned here. They'll process Friday, he said. Usually by noon batch. How do you know? He chuckled. Because bureaucracy loves routine more than apology. Outside, the gate looked calmer now, our cacti lined like green punctuation marks. No noise, no letters, just quiet sunlight hitting the spines like glass needles. At 10:07 a.m., my phone buzzed, HOA Treasury Portal. Refund pending. A single line blinked across the screen. Batch queued Friday. Treasurer P. L. Morales. Paul Morales. I remembered him from the hearing, new treasurer young enough to still believe rules meant something. I emailed a short note. Mr. Morales, please confirm that the refund corresponds to Order 12-07, rescission filed. He replied 6 minutes later, confirmed. Amount $500. Scheduled Friday 0900. Reference aggressive landscaping. Withdrawn. Transparency memo to follow. Paul Mini Cliff Number 1. The system wasn't just retreating, it was reporting itself. I printed the exchange and clipped it to Exhibit F. Refund process log. The binder's spine had grown thick, the weight of outrage turning into paperwork. Frank stopped by with coffee. "So, it's done." "Almost," I said, tapping the envelope. They rescinded it. He grinned. "About time." "Linda, silent," I said. "Her signature's missing from the order." He laughed. "That's louder than signing." Elena texted a photo, one of the cacti blooming early. Yellow flower, absurdly bright against the gravel. "Proof blossoms, too," she wrote. Dad sent a message a few minutes later, no greeting, just one line. "Truth doesn't yell." It's signed. Mini Cliff Number 2. I copied it into the notebook margin beside the printed order. At noon, I drove to the HOA office. The lobby smelled of toner and lemon disinfectant. A placard on the counter read, "Treasurer, Paul L. Morales." He looked up from a monitor, startled but polite. "Mr. Keller, right? That's me? Congratulations, sir. The board's order came through this morning. Refund batches queued. Appreciate it. Can I get a copy of the ledger entry?" "Sure." He printed a single sheet and stamped it, "Received and Archived." The stamp hit with that familiar thunk that's halfway between punctuation and closure. He slid the paper across. "You're officially cleared." I wasn't here when they issued that fine. Just wanted to say, it never sat right. "I know," I said, folding the page carefully. "Good to see someone here still checks the math." He smiled. "I audit my own totals. Habit." Outside, the sunlight hit the parking lot so bright it felt clean. The paper inside my folder warmed against my arm, ink settling into permanence. Mini Cliff Number 3. Justice doesn't arrive dramatic, it arrives documented. Back home, I added the new page to the binder, Exhibit G, Rescission Order. The binder spine now read A through G in neat labels. I laid the old fine notice beside it, creases, soft tape residue still faint. A ghost of accusation meeting its own obituary. Frank filmed me holding the two papers side by side. "Mind if I upload this clip for the community thread?" he asked. "Go ahead," I said. "Make sure the seal shows." He zoomed on the embossed crest, the inked date, the word filed. "What caption?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "Use Dad's line. Truth doesn't yell, it's signed." He grinned. "That'll trend." Dad called again that evening. Envelope safe. In the binder front pocket. Good. Someday they'll tell this story like it was a fluke. Keep your receipts. I have 7 exhibits. Then you have history. The line went quiet, both of us listening to the faint hum of our separate houses, the kind of silence that comes when noise finally gives up. At 4:55, an automated email popped in HOA Treasury refund executed. Amount $500. Status paid, archived. The confirmation PDF attached itself neatly to my desktop like a digital period at the end of a long sentence. I printed it, signed my initials in blue, and slid it under the last tab. Outside, the sun fell behind the fence, throwing the cacti into gold silhouettes. I opened the gate, let the hinges groan once, then close softly. For the first time in months, it sounded like normal life again. The original notice still hung framed above my desk, an artifact, not a wound. Beneath it, the rescission order gleamed, twin seals visible under the lamplight, filed and archived. I poured a cup of coffee, no adrenaline in the motion now. The paper rustled as the air conditioner kicked on, lifting a corner like a small flag. Justice doesn't announce itself. It sits there, signed, dated, archived, waiting quietly for the next person to notice. Dawn came in clean bands, pale gold, sliding over gravel. The cacti threw straight shadows across the front walk, a ruler of light and spine. For the first time in months, the gate didn't feel like a border. It felt like an entry. Dad met me at the curb with a slim folder and his old notary pouch. He lifted the flap. The brass seal glinted. Minutes template, he said. Disclosure addendum 2. We walked toward the clubhouse. Inside, fluorescent tubes hummed softer than the hearing's glare. A folding table faced 3 rows of plastic chairs. On the wall, a cork bulletin board. Agenda, refund confirmation, policy update, pushpins, a highlighter mark, coffee in a steel urn breathing steam beside a tray of supermarket cookies. Frank perched near the back with his camera. Elena sat 2 seats in hands-folded soil still ghosting the creases of her palms. The treasurer Paul arranged papers at the front table with the careful motions of a person who wanted the day to stay quiet. Dad leaned close. "We'll keep it procedural," he murmured. "Echo, not victory lap." I nodded. The air smelled like thermos coffee and dry paper. The chair at the center. Linda's sat empty. A single name placard faced us, chair, L.J. The absence carried its own weight. Paul tapped the mic once. It clicked alive, a little pop of current. "Order," he said, voice steady. "We'll begin with refunds." He lifted a list. Per order Faro 1207. Rescission. Filed all fines related to HOA 7.4 are reversed and paid. Entries show paid, archived. He looked up. Receipts are available. I move we attach the ledger to the minutes. Dad raised a hand from the audience. Second, and suggest we note, batch executed Friday, 0900, for completeness. Noted, Paul said. He stamped the ledger copy, received. The thud was soft, not triumphant. It sounded like furniture being set back where it belonged. He turned the next page. Policy update. A breath through the room. Proposed amendment add a subsection clarifying drought-tolerant planting setbacks and species verification. Working title. He glanced at me a quick, almost sheepish smile. The Cactus Clause. Minnie, cliff number 1, hung there gentle and inevitable. Dad stood folder in hand. "May I read the disclosure line into the record?" Paul nodded, slid the mic toward the aisle. Dad didn't take the mic. He stayed where he was, voice measured enough to carry without amplification. Mandatory disclosure, he read. Any enforcement under HOA 7.4 shall cite the filed text and attach either A stamped copy or B, the clerk's certified link. Drafts or internal policy memos do not control. He closed the folder. That language prevents what happened here. Paul looked to the rows. Comments. Elena lifted a hand, voice small but sure. Verification of species should accept nursery certification. Not everyone keeps Latin names in a binder. Agreed, Dad said. Will include professional witness permitted. A neighbor 2 seats over cleared his throat. Setbacks are just numbers, he said, but the numbers kept us neighbors. So, thanks. Silence followed, then a scatter of knuckles on chairbacks, a quiet older man's applause. Frank lowered his camera a fraction. The room felt bigger by an inch. Linda stepped in then, late and pale, a manila envelope under her arm. She did not take the center chair. She stood at the side of the table, eyes down. Paul slid a single sheet toward her. Release of claim, he said softly. Acknowledgement of withdrawal. No admission of anything beyond the order. She signed. No speech, no defense. The room heard the pen meet the line and then lift. She placed the envelope next to the ledger and stepped back. The fluorescent hum was suddenly very clear. Minnie, cliff number 2. The sound of a pen, not an argument. Paul faced the room again. Vote on the amendment. Hands rose slow, deliberate. Mine, Elena's, Frank's. Older men along the back row ball caps bent into familiar curves. Dad didn't vote. Just watched the count like a surveyor, reading a line. Amendment passes, Paul said. He reached for the stamp, paused, glanced at Dad. Dad nodded once. Paul pressed the seal. Accepted Cactus Clause. The breath that escaped the room wasn't a cheer. It was release. Someone clapped once, then twice. Then the clapping thinned, and in its place a clean 3-second quiet settled over the seats. I felt it run through me the way cold creek water runs over stone sharp, then clarifying. Dad leaned in at my shoulder. "Remember this cadence," he whispered. "Applause, then quiet. That's when change holds." Elena wiped at one eye, smiled without fuss. Paul squared the stack, lined the edges to the table's lip, then set the stamp exactly parallel to the paper's corner, like proof should never sit crooked again. I raised my hand. "One note for the minutes," I said. Paul nodded. "The line item that started this aggressive landscaping is cleared. Refunds posted, policy corrected. The garden remains measured and verified." I let the mic rest in its cradle. Silent beat. Silence can be applause. The phrase landed like it had been waiting for its place all morning. Frank looked up from the viewfinder, meeting my eyes once. Elena's shoulders eased. Dad stayed seated, but his face softened in a way I hadn't seen in years, the lawyer's angles rounding into something simpler. Pride without words. Mini Cliff number 3. A room that chose to be quiet. Paul rapped. Final item. A statement for the bulletin board. He slid a single sentence onto the projector, black on white. Filed law controls. Drafts don't. No logos, no flourish. Just the sentence a neighborhood could live by. Outside, the lot smelled faintly of rain on warm asphalt. We walked out together, Dad, Elena, Frank, me. Someone across the way was lighting a portable grill, early smoke curling into the pale morning. On the clubhouse door, the clerk taped a copy of the amendment beneath the agenda. It fluttered once and then stayed still. Dad handed me the folder. "Keep the original, post the copy." I pinned the copy to the corkboard by the entrance, one blue thumbtack at each corner. The paper sat flat, no bubbles, no tilt. Frank capped his lens. "You gonna say the line?" he asked, half smile. I looked at the clause, the ledger, the empty chair still visible through the doorway. Finally, someone fought back, I said, not loud. "Just certain." Dad didn't answer. He didn't need to. He set his palm on the bulletin board frame the way you steady something you've hung level. We turned to go. The camera on Frank's shoulder caught a last slow pan across the room. Ledger stamped amendment, posted neighbors drifting out chairs standing in even rows. The frame stopped as if by instinct on the center table. The chair with the placard chair. LJ sat empty under the humming lights. The lens held there. Then the red tally light blinked off. The sun hit the brass like fire. The plaque caught the morning light in perfect alignment, its engraved letters, crisp shadows carved into Permanence Community Grounds restored, 2024. I knelt, pressing the final screw into the concrete base. The drill's hum blended with the cicadas, a low rhythm that sounded almost ceremonial. Click, tighten, silence. Dad's voice floated from behind the lens, his voice now the narrator more than the participant. Level I checked with the spirit bubble. The green line stayed dead center. "Perfect," I said. He didn't answer right away, just watched. The same man who once called bylaws his battlefield was now holding the camera like an archivist guarding peace. Mini Cliff number 1. The hum of the drill fading into calm. The plaque sat where the gate once carried its notice, same bolts, same frame, different weight. Where paper once accused metal, now remembered. I brushed dust from the corners and stepped back. The letters gleamed, Community Grounds Restored. Below, smaller script filed FARTR 12-07, 2024, Hearing Committee. It wasn't decorative, it was documentary. Dad's voice again quieter this time, as if reciting to the future proof built on principle outlasts any rule. The camera panned across the street, neighbors gathering coffee in paper cups, someone's dog nosing at the curb. Frank waved the drone controller, overhead lens circling us like a slow orbit. Elena leaned on her shovel, grinning through her sunglasses. Even Linda was there off to the side near her car, arms folded, not smiling, but not leaving either. Her silence was neither surrender nor defiance. It was just quiet, which was enough. Paul, the treasurer, arrived holding a frame of his own, a smaller plaque for the clubhouse. "Twin set," he said. "You mount the big one. This one goes inside." He handed me the second piece. The brass was still warm from engraving. Below the same heading, a single line etched in smaller type: "Filed law controls. Drafts don't." Mini Cliff number 2. The moral engraved, not spoken. Dad gave a short laugh. "Imagine that accountability in metal." I smiled. Harder to misfile. He turned the camera toward me. "Say your line," he said softly. I looked straight into the lens. The background held the plaque, the cacti, the repaired gate, and the same morning light that once exposed the fine notice months ago. For a moment, every sound, the rustle of paper cups, the low hum of the generator powering the projector for the ceremony, fell away. "This is it," I said. Every inch measured, every page filed, every receipt stamped. Then I took a breath, leveled my voice, and said what the whole story had been climbing toward. Finally, someone fought back. The words landed clean, not shouted. The crowd didn't cheer, they just exhaled. That was enough. Mini Cliff number 3. The echo of a quiet victory. The projector on the folding table behind us hummed, looping the short clip from the hearing, the boardroom lights, the seal hitting paper, the line. Paper outlives noise. It played without sound, only the projector's mechanical breath filling the space. The sequence faded into a still frame. The signature, the seal, the timestamp 03:17. Then, fade-out white screen, hum, softening the end of a legal storm. Dad lowered the camera. "It's done," he said. "No more filings, no more drafts." "Until someone needs this story," I said. He nodded, closing the tripod legs. "Then they'll have the proof." The community started to drift apart, neighbors walking home slow and satisfied. Elena left her shovel by the signpost like an offering. Paul taped a copy of the amendment summary to the bulletin board. The breeze flipped it once, then pinned it still. Linda slipped her envelope, her release copy, under a windshield wiper before driving off. No note, no return address, just closure. I gathered the tools one by one, sliding the screwdriver into its slot, coiling the extension cord. Every sound was deliberate final. Dad's last words floated from the camera mic as he packed it away. "You can't outvote a stamp, son. You can only learn from it." I looked at the plaque once more. The reflection caught my face, older somehow, etched in the brass alongside the words. For the first time since that morning of the fine, the gate stood still, unlocked, unguarded. The sky was a wide blue band, the kind of morning that forgives everything except lies. As the projector clicked off behind me, silence took the yard. It wasn't empty silence, it was earned. Fade. The hum thinned, then stopped. The brass plaque gleamed in the early sun, its letters clean as law community grounds restored. 2024. The scent of cut grass mixed with coffee from the folding table, a quiet sign the fight had ended. I ran my fingers over the seal, cool and certain, remembering how a single notice had turned into proof. My father's words stayed behind the lens. Proof built on principle outlasts any rule. He was right. Justice isn't loud, it's steady. The plaque will tarnish someday, but the line beneath it won't. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story. Below your map might help someone redraw theirs.